Why is this cocksucker not... There he is.
Now recording.
There we go. All right.
All right.
All right. Uh, hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our today's special episode of Verbal Laxative. We got a special crew today, and we're going to do like Oprah's book club, and we're going to talk about a series of books. The one that we're going to do today will be Wheel of Time, and let's introduce our all-star cast. You got me, Zinzin, and Phil. Started off.
Hi.
Phil. Hassan, regular cast.
Hey.
And we have my friend and fellow criminal, I guess. I don't know. Fuck. James, only 2D. How's it going?
Hello.
Hello. All right, we're going to be talking Wheel of Time. Go.
That's it. Just go.
Well, okay, let's just start off here. We've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and now we're basically here. All of us have finished the book, some earlier than the others, but now we can talk about this because it's going to be made into a show. And I will easily say that this book series was the longest series I've ever read, 14 books in total. And it took me a long time. I read it at work and whatnot and pushed it out. A couple of months later, 14 books read. And yeah, for sure this one is the most longest series I've ever read. It blows everything out of the water. And there's a lot of shit to talk about in here too.
And actually, it's 15 books if you include the prequel,
Yeah, yes.
New Spring. So
So the prequel wasn't really a prequel, though, right?
Well,
yeah, no, it's not a like. I
It
don't,
used to be just book. The prequel was just book one.
I don't think anyone's ever considered it book one. It's always been
no.
about Moraine. Everyone's considered Eye of the World as book one.
Oh, I have. I'm
Yeah,
getting.
it's the New Spring, or not the New Spring, New Spring, just New Spring. Yeah.
why wouldn't it be a
Yeah,
prequel? Wouldn't it would just be it predates everything in the Wheel of Time, right? Like
Oh,
It
I
is.
think
It is.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember the first book I read. It was just one book.
what?
Like it was all together as one book, and then like a few years later, like it got split up into a prequel, and then I
Oh
reread it, and I was like, oh, it's like the same thing.
no, what you're thinking? They split books one and two into two parts for because they were trying to go uh get a younger audience involved. So the Eye of the World in the early 2000s, they split it into two books, and then the second book, The Great Hunt, they split that into two books as well, and then they stopped doing that after that. So when they split the Eye of the World into two books for a younger audience, it was marketed. It was just a marketing scheme basically. There was nothing changed in terms of the story or anything like that. They just split it so it'd be less daunting, I guess, for young adults to
How the
read.
fuck would they split it? Like which part would in those
Like
books would they split when they would end the
I
first part?
I think I can't remember now. But when they split the book one, I think it ended somewhere um like basically right down the middle. Like I think it was when they get out of Shadar Logoth or something.
Uh-huh.
They split it right there, something like that. I can't remember exactly. I don't have actually I do have those versions, but I don't have those in front of me, so I can't tell you.
Well, that's pretty weird.
It,
There's
it
no
would be insane if you remember when, like, where they split in book one, like from 20 years ago.
it's so unnecessary though, right?
No, like I said,
Yeah.
it was all focused for a younger audience. Like they want to get, I guess, more, I guess, teens or preteens, I don't know, whatever, involved in reading here, trying to spread the fan base or
I think it's gonna
creativity.
be also an explosion in fan base after the series if the series actually starts airing, right? And then
Yeah,
you're gonna get a lot more people that reads the books and stuff.
yeah. Then they might do split versions and stuff like that. Just because each, I mean, compared to the fantasy coming out these days, these books aren't that big.
Mm.
Um, like Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive is insanely bigger than these books.
Oh
Like
yeah.
each book is like bordering on like the mass market paperback versions are like 1,200 pages plus. So
Well, I was talking with
huge.
James about this earlier, and then from what he was telling me about like the whole Brandon Sanderson universe is like he's not even close to halfway done. If I remember, I think James, you said that he's basically just building it out right now. This is the start of it, and eventually he's gonna have a whole
Yeah, I
shit ton.
mean, we got the fourth Stormlight Archives book coming out, but that's supposed to be Plan 10, and then a bunch of his other books have plans, and they all interconnect, and all the universes combined. So it's going to be like a huge thing, but it probably won't be done until much later in our lives.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. So I guess some people that don't know, the original author of the series was he didn't finish it, right? Brandon Sanderson finished it for him because he died. So
Hmm.
the original author is Robert Jordan, right? Did I remember right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. That'd be embarrassing, but yeah, Robert Jordan, and then he basically wrote it all out. But then he was diagnosed, I guess, with some sickness, and then he got Sanderson to finish his book, gave him a whole shit stack of notes,
Uh,
and I believe it's the last book that Sanderson did, or is it the 13 and
Last
14?
no.
the
But
last book.
just a point of order on that. It was actually Harriet that tapped Brandon Sanderson because Robert Jordan had already been dead for I think 3 years.
Right, you're right, right. So Harriet, his wife, also his editor, yeah, tapped Brandon Sanderson to finish the book.
Hmm.
You're right, you're right. Um, and then yeah, which books were it? Was it just the last book, or was it the last two books that Sanderson was the one that
It
finished?
was it was supposed to be
I know,
it was
Memory of
it
Light,
ended up
yeah,
being
It was the
it
last
ended up being
three,
12,
but
last
yeah,
three.
12, 13.
yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
Jordan actually wanted it to be one mega book, but then Sanderson said that it's too much to put out in one book, so he split it into three. And by what he said, Robert Jordan had pretty much wrote Memory of Light, and then he just filled in the gaps kind of with the other two books.
Okay, I just want to ask: was everybody happy with the way the series ended, with how Sanderson ended, or was anybody like felt that Sanderson didn't write it good, or where he was better than Jordan, and or anything like that, or if the ending ended it the way that you thought it would, or you wanted it to be better, or what? What do you guys? What are you guys' thoughts on all this?
Was happy with the ending. Um, Given the fact that some Brandon Sanderson had to come in and finish it. I mean, not had to, but he was tapped to. It's not. It's not. Um, we'll never know how it would have been if Brandon Sanders or Robert Jordan himself had finished it. But I think Brandon Sanderson did a great job based on whatever notes he had from Robert Jordan, and I think he stayed true to the series in finishing it. Um, I was not disappointed with it. Like it left me wanting more of the world, but knowing that there won't be any more of the world.
Yeah, I more or less share this same opinion as you. What about you guys?
I enjoyed it for sure, and I definitely felt we missed out on some characters, like because I guess Sanderson didn't have much to go on for them. Like Nakomi, she was a big part of the ending,
Right.
but no one really understood her because she was missing a section. And then yeah, outside that, it was all pretty good. I like that Brandon Sanderson doesn't have Robert Jordan's writing tics, so it wasn't as annoying sometimes.
Your ticks were every time he would write smoothing the skirts. What else?
Smoothing the skirt, tugging the
Boxing the
braid,
ears.
boxing the ears.
Tugging the braid.
I I
Tugging the braid is probably the biggest one.
I liked it in the end. I grew. It grew on me. It was like that time when I went to Cuba and they didn't have Coca Cola. They only had the Cuban version of cola, and it tasted awful at first. But then a couple of days in, I was like addicted to that stuff. I wanted that stuff, and that was the same with Robert Jordan's his little writing ticks. I wanted to see box the ears. I
Yeah,
wanted to see
and
all of that.
he added in a good part too that I enjoyed. That village of the returning. If you
Yeah.
recall that part, that was all Brandon Sanderson adding them in,
Oh,
and for the
really?
final battle. Yeah,
That wasn't Jordan's take that was Sanderson himself.
That
Yeah.
was Sanderson, yeah.
That was a pretty cool take. I wasn't expecting that until it happened, so it was pretty cool. Like the first time Matt goes through the village, it was interesting, but then when when he brought it all back for the in the final battle, it was just like, yeah, that's definitely Brandon Sanderson.
I mean, it kind of just sucks for them. They gotta be like that forever, though, right? Everybody in the village.
Well, I don't,
Yeah.
are they forever? I don't know. With everything, the way it ends, and if the
I guess so.
if the
Yeah.
taint is really gone, then because that was all the dark ones.
You're right. No, yeah, you're right. I have to defer to your most recent recollection of the books. Yeah, you're right. After the Dark One's all gone, yeah, it could have been everything has been changed. So it's conceivable that that's no longer that kind of like curse doesn't hold sway over that village anymore.
We should have put a spoiler warning at the
It doesn't
beginning.
fucking. No, we're not spoiling. We're not putting any warning. We're going to spoil the book.
All right.
We're not even
It's
like.
been completed for how long, right? Like,
Yeah.
Well, plus, like, look at what we're talking about. Like, if nobody's read the book right now, they won't know what the fuck we're talking about, anyways. Right?
yeah, that's true.
But anyways, yeah, I guess the short intro would just be it's a fantasy book, 14 pages. It's basically one of those ones where it follows a hero and his companions, and they go on and they adventure. They start from like level 0, and they eventually work their way up to the top of their fucking stations in this world. Um, One of the interesting things I thought that was in this book was it was clearly delineated along lines of like male and female. In regards to that, when you're thrust into this world in book 1, there's like a class of, I guess you can call them fucking wizards or some shit, but they're like the top magic users in the world, the Aes Sedai, right? And they're all women when you start off in this book, right? You get you get sort of like this prequel of this one guy named Luz Theron, right? And you don't know what the hell's going on, but it's just that all you get from it is, oh, he fucked up. He did something, he fucked up, right? And then it fast forwards to the current time, and it's Rand and his buddies, Matt and Perrin, and they're in a village. And then sometimes there's talk about, like this fucking magical, like this high class of people, that's in the center of, I guess, the map, I guess. I don't even forget, Tarvalin, that was the place that was called, and then they're like supposedly like the most powerful sort of beings in this world, and all the kings and queens kind of have to like defer to them on some stuff as well, right? And then I thought it's kind of like interesting because he wrote the book when during like the 90s or some shit, right? And then already already it starts out that like, yeah, it's kind of funny to me because like in this world you would think that because it's set up like this, a lot of women in this world would have like a much more like in a commanding sort of a class than some men are, just because of the way it's set up, right? And then you kind of get that as well. In Rand's village, I think one of the ranks, like one of the ranks that was on par with like village mayor was the village, what would they call it, the wisdom or some shit,
Yeah, the wisdom.
which is one of the other major characters. What's her name? Nynaeve. Nynaeve. Did I say it right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Where she is like the wisdom of the village, and it's a pretty respected rank, and it does make sense. It does, most of it kind of jives well with this world. So then nothing comes out of the blue too much, where you're like, what the fuck, this doesn't make sense. I felt like that world building that he did was pretty consistent, down to the level of like Rand's village.
The world building, Robert Jordan, I think, is amazing at world building. Not just like in terms of the village sense, but just in terms of the detail of each of the cultures that we see. Like, it's not a superficial culture. Like, oh, these guys are this tribe because they wear blue vests or something. It's like, they have their whole cultural nuances and everything, and each one is vastly different than other ones. They're not all, like
Hmm.
it's not like a cookie cutter kind of thing where these guys are going to be the ones that are really short, and then these guys are the ones who are really good with bows or something, and that's it.
Well, it's really interesting because in our world, in our universe, fucking there was a time in history where women would be burned at the stake or killed because of they'd be suspected of like witchcraft or something, right? That, and then in this world, it's the exact opposite. The guy would be killed if he displayed any kind of like ability to use this power or not. And it's in the lore of the world where like they're afraid of them because they will go insane and basically kill a whole bunch of people. So then it's the reverse, right? There's a witch hunt for men that have power in this world. And then I like how like I said, like you said, yeah, it's the details are all there, and like the women have a more they punch above their weight in this world, and it shows in like down to the detail of, like I said, the smallest village and whatnot.
Yeah, it's very matriarchal. Like it even not just the Aes Sedai, but even most of the countries are ruled by queens. Like you don't see that many kings. There's a couple of kings thrown in here and there,
Yeah,
but most of them are ruled by women, even if whether they have the power or whether they're Aes Sedai or not.
yeah. Some of
They
the
all
prominent
have.
ones, like
Yeah,
Andor, was basically
yeah,
ruled by queens, right?
yeah. So
The Sea Chans were the queen too, right?
The
yeah,
Shan Chan.
yeah.
Shan Chan. Oh yeah, Shan Chan.
Yeah, from what I
It's
can
been so
gather.
long.
Yeah, from what I can gather, the Shan Chan were also matriarchal. So the queen is the one that is rightful ruler.
And then the sea folk as well. They were ruled by, I forget what they're called now, but uh,
Yeah, we know.
the Windrun. What are they? The wind? No, not the. That's from Stormlight. Never mind.
That's the hardest thing. If you read a lot of fantasy, the worlds kind of all blend together, right?
Sort of, yeah.
I
Especially
find
if
that
they're from the same author.
I find that so much so for Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson. Like
Oh,
like if if Robert Jordan ever had a protege or did it, it would have been Brandon Sanderson. I think Brandon Sanderson takes so much of his idea, like he's influenced so much by Robert Jordan that you can see it all over the Cosmere. I think like he's just he's like Robert Jordan.
I think he writes that in a forward too, right? On in the last couple books, he's like, to give in the forward, he gives the praise to like Robert Jordan and says, like, oh yeah, he's influenced me a lot. Like really respect that, whatnot. But between the two, I mean, there are some noticeable differences in the way they kind of I guess, right? Like I'm only talking about just reading Sanderson's from the last, I guess, two books, but you guys that read his actual universe of books, I guess you guys can talk about it more in detail. Like their styles. Is there any kind of differences that you notice? You talked about the similarities, Hassan, but are there any differences between them?
In terms of writing, I would say Brandon Sanderson writes much more to the point than Robert Jordan does. Robert Jordan likes to take these meandering kind of narratives throughout the books where it goes back and forth and stuff, but Brandon Sanderson is very much to the point. But Sanderson, I guess his writing is more tidier, if I could say. Not that that's the exact meaning I'm trying to convey, but
I
uh,
kind of get what you're going with that, Hassan, but like I feel like Jordan builds a more detailed world. Like Sanderson, I feel like I don't know what's going on. Like when something's happening with the main character, I really don't know what's going on in other parts of his universe at that time. Whereas I feel like with Jordan, you kind of do. Because it's like this scene has this character, but then later on, you find what was happening in the other side of the world at that same or at equivalent times, right?
yeah, I definitely agree with that. The world building, uh, Robert Jordan is much more of a master at that than, I mean, not that Brandon Sanderson's worlds or uh, planets, I guess, would are bad, but They they Jordan is better at creating the worlds.
I think a key point in there though is that when you're reading like the Wheel of Time versus like say Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, is yeah, he put a lot of work into world building, but like when you look at the books, there was a lot of like really dragging Wheel of Time books. But every book Brandon Sanderson writes is like a banger. Like it's you're
Hmm.
really progressing through them, so that's kind of a difference there.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say by by being tidier. Like there's no, it's like one example is the original Mistborn trilogy. I think that's one of the most complete and dare I say beautiful trilogy out there because it leaves you with every question you could have answered. Like there's nowhere where you're like, well, what the hell happened to that guy or this person or why did that
Hmm.
happen?
That's true if you don't think of the overarching story, like if you don't think about the shards and all that. So it's
Right, yeah,
tidy
yeah.
in the main story, yeah.
But that
And
story, sorry, I just want that story is. I feel like it's built for TV. Like that would be the best, perfect like fantasy for a TV adaptation.
it would be, yeah.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
read an interview where Sanderson talks about it though, but he said if it were to go to TV, he would basically rewrite everything. He wouldn't put it out there as is. So
Hmm.
it'd be very interesting.
Yeah.
and that's the other thing about Brandon Sanderson. There is the overarching Cosmere, but you can read each. Like if you just want to be a
As a
Mistborn
standalone.
lover, yeah, you can you can just be a Mistborn fanatic and stay with the Mistborn series. If you just want to read the Stormlight Archive, you could do that, and it'd still be a full experience. Like you won't be like I have to read Mistborn or I have to read Elantris or anything like that.
I don't know if we'll be able to do that by the end of it though. Like right now you can, there's only a little bit of crossover, but by the end I couldn't say that for sure.
Yeah, that right now it's possible, but the way he's going, I mean, the ultimate goal for him is to have the Cosmere fully fleshed out. So at that point, I think it will be difficult. Like if you and that's that's eventually gonna happen, like pretty soon. I think the way he is with his books, like even with the Stormlight Archive, he's book 4 is coming out soon, so he's almost halfway through that as well. And for what he said for the Stormlight Archive was book 1 to 5 would be like uh once basically one pentology, and then book 6 to 10 would be another.
Yeah,
So
he's a really prolific writer. That's the one benefit about him compared to a lot of other fantasy writers. They take a very long time.
Yeah, he just
mhm.
fucking pumps them out, doesn't he?
His
Yeah,
first
and they're
book
all
was
high
published
quality.
in 2005, and now in 2020 he already has like 4 Stormlight, 6 Mistborn, Elantris, and Warbreaker. So that's 12 main Cosmere novels, not including short stories and novellas and everything, in 15 years.
Yeah,
Like
so
that's crazy.
And
yeah.
they're polished too. They're not just like a mess.
I think
They're very.
definitely, think definitely they made the good choice of going with Sanderson to finish this series, especially because yeah, like you said, he's talented. He's a talented guy.
Not to mention he has other young adult books that he cranks out
Mm-hmm.
every once in a while too, like the Steelheart series, and then there was the Arithmetist. It's only one book, but um, uh, there was another one about evil librarians. I forget the name.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and he has Legion and he has some sci-fi ones as well.
Yeah,
yeah.
he's
So
a machine.
yeah,
He's a
I'm
machine.
just curious.
definitely.
If you guys read a lot of fantasy, so out of the fantasy series that you read, there's gonna be a set that the author finished the whole series themselves, and the ones where they had someone else finish it. Do you guys notice if there's a difference in like the way the ending comes, or sometimes if the author's out to finish it themselves, they just drag it on because really, like the ending is always the most difficult part of the story, right? Do you guys know? Have you noticed any difference with that?
I don't know.
I think it depends a lot on the writers. Like a lot of writers actually have like a really good blueprint they follow along the way. So it's tough to say.
It's either you have planned it all out or you're just fucking winging it. You're just writing the book by the seat of your
I'm
pants.
trying
Yeah.
to think of the other series, fantasy
But
series that finished.
like JRR is like just dragging it out. Like I think for JRR, he'd rather like not finish it.
Who do you mean?
Like
Tolkien?
JRR Martin.
Oh, Martin.
Yeah,
GR,
Tolkien.
yeah.
Tolkien finished his Lord of the Rings, but he left like a lot of unfinished work.
Well, I was
too.
gonna
Like,
say
he
like
wasn't even
Tolkien
close
can
to
only
finish.
drag it out for so long because he's dead already. If you were talking
Yeah.
about Tolkien.
Um,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the best example right now would probably be Patrick Rothfuss because his third book's been taking a long time, but he's big on the prose and he wants everything to be perfect. But he's also stated that he wants a 6-part main series after that, and I just can't see that happening with the way he's writing. The speed,
No.
anyway.
right. I think his second book, I remember, I waited like an extra a year or two or something, and yeah,
4 years.
the quality I felt wasn't as there compared to his first book either.
Aren't these guys ever scared about just a fall off from fans if they just drag it out indefinitely though?
That's a good question.
I mean, like
I don't know.
you drag out the book for like what 5-10 years, you know, like your original fans that you built up, you know, writing your series, they don't ever worry about just fucking people just forget about all this shit because it's been so long.
I don't know. We'll start to see that now because most of the, like, everybody's waiting on the Game of Thrones. Lots of people are waiting on.
He has a final book.
Lots of people are waiting on Patrick Rothfuss. There's another series called The Gentleman Bastards by
Scott Lynch.
Yeah. He has a planned series of 7 books, but he's only done 3 so far, and the 4th one people have been waiting for it for, I don't know, a few years now as well, 5 or 6 years, I think, or longer. And I guess we'll start to see once these guys actually put out these long-awaited books, how many people come back to the series.
And then if we've read them, then we'll do an episode on it as well. I guess. But anyways, just back to the Wheel of Time because I wanted to talk about kind of like, I guess I don't think we can go through each book by book, but I do want to kind of start from just the beginning when they start to build this world and whatnot, right? And I assume when they do the show, like season 1 will basically more or less just be based on book 1
And
right?
2.
And 2. They're gonna do both into the first season.
Yeah, as far as everything I've seen shows, it looks like they're going to try and get 2.
What was the end of book 2 again? Like, what did they do in book 2?
The end is when he blows the horn.
He blows the horn, right?
He blows
Yeah.
the horn. Okay, right. And then book 1 was he fights Ishmael, right? He doesn't. He fights those two other guys, right?
Asmodee at the Eye of the World, sorry. And then there's the Green Man is there who.
I thought he doesn't fight the Morden before he was Morden, Ishmael or whoever.
Isn't that at the end of the Great War? Because the heroes are fighting, and then he's up in the clouds fighting.
Oh, that would be
Ishmael?
book 2 then, hey?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, man, it kind of
In book-
melded in my brain.
In book 1, I think it was Bilal and Asmodee, if I remember the Forsaken correctly.
Yeah, like the basically the two guys that really didn't amount to anything, and then these guys got wrecked, right? They're like they're like the equivalent of like Nappa from Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
They're built up as pretty badass in the beginning, but after a while, 14 books later, those guys are nothing.
I guess that would be mainly Bilal. Asmodee, if I recall correctly, he comes back. He's basically okay, right? No spoilers don't matter. He comes back, or the Dark One brings him back.
Yeah, reincarnates as
Yeah, and then he's forced into helping.
Rand
learn to control the one power.
What I kind of find funny is also in the beginning there's a lot of like power creep that does go on in this series, and you first get it from Trollocs, right? Trollocs and the Fade, right? Yeah. In the first book, the Trollocs, when they first make their appearance and Rand and his dad and fight them, it's like the description is these are huge beasts, right? These huge scary ass motherfuckers. that can tear a man apart, right? And there's something like the village is facing like extinction versus these Trollocs. Later on, these Trollocs are just basically meat patties, right? Fucking
I don't think so. Why do you say that?
because they get killed so easily. Like by even halfway in the series, remember when Rand just starts to unleash his power, killed basically like 100,000 of them in that one battle just by himself. Like what was it? At least tens of thousands, right?
Yeah, you
Well,
can see the power creep in it because like in the beginning, Trollocs, like in the Slender Men there, they were big problems, and then by the end, they weren't really an issue for
Oh,
anybody.
definitely. And the Fade was the other one. Remember, like they made that one other exponential leap from the power of the Trolloc. After they can, the Trollocs weren't so scary anymore. The next one was the Fade, the Myrddraal or whoever, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And at least from in the first book, they were built up to be this scary, shadowy thing, right? It's something that you couldn't even really grasp physically. And then the way that they're described, there's no face, and then the way they scream and whatnot, and their blood is their blades are poisonous or whatever, makes them seem totally scary as hell.
Yeah, but we're seeing them from the point of view of these simple farmer boys
The
who
kids,
don't know
exactly.
much more than herding sheep and growing tobacco. So at that point they are scary, but then once these guys learn to
Not even learn. Once these guys basically get the main characters get like an exponential power boost in their abilities. These guys are almost nothing to them, right?
yeah,
These are like the putties in Power Rangers, right? At that point.
exactly. It's just the the basic troops fodder for the cannons kind of thing
And you
at
do,
that point.
like, it goes pretty fast too, because in book one, they already fight two of the Forsaken, right? And the Forsaken are those guys that are like the elite of the elite of the of the bad guys, basically, right? And the main bad guy in this story is the Dark One, right? He's sort of seen as this godlike, this dark godlike figure that basically just ruins everything, like just fucks around the world every so often, right? And then below him are his the horsemen of the apocalypse. Well, it'll be like what, 7 of them, the 7 Forsaken. 13. Sorry, shit.
It might be 7 in the TV series. I think they're going to combine a lot of roles. So
Yeah,
You think
they
you
would
think that's a
have
good
to.
idea? Is they combining some of these roles? I mean, some of them, yeah, sure. Like Bilal, like you said, he's kind of useless. I don't even remember him that well.
Yeah,
I think you have to for TV.
yeah,
You know what?
Some of them don't do anything for like 8 books.
yeah, you're right. Like that fucker didn't even do anything. I totally forgot about him until you just mentioned him right now.
Yeah, and nobody remembers Baphomet or whatever. So until he's
Baphomet, yeah.
transformed.
Yeah,
yeah.
they would have
And
to. Yeah,
even, what's the other one? Okay, I can't remember the name.
Mogadeen was pretty prominent in the series, but
But towards the end, like in the beginning, she's
yeah. You don't
wasn't-
hear about her at all.
But
yeah.
she made it to the end, like the very end, right?
Well, yeah, but you don't hear about her at all until like the end.
Right, but you can't cut her out. That would be like that. You would change the whole story if you cut her out. I don't know who would replace her.
Oh, I don't know either, but like 14.
And-
They're gonna cut if they're gonna cut it down to 7 Forsaken. I bet some people are gonna get that cut, right?
Yeah. There's Lanfear as well. She's prominent, but then she disappears.
Yeah, but I think they're gonna keep her because she's pretty important, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you could move Grendel in with someone, and who knows? You know,
Yeah.
like Demandred didn't do anything for 13 books. He's super strong, so you kind of got to keep him. But it's like he
Yeah.
could have some of the roles of other people.
Right?
Like you could almost make him Ravine, and instead of Ravine dying, he just goes behind the scenes and becomes Demandred later, type thing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely, because Ravine was just important for that like one book.
Yeah, let's fucking talk about these guys. 'Cause these guys are interesting too, right? Because between all of them, they got their own little quirks. They got their own little characters, and they even have their own power levels between all of them. So, like, 13 of them. The strongest one was Ishmael. Later on, he becomes Moradin, right? And then everybody else. I guess which Forsaken did you made? I guess made was like, I guess, your favorite one, or the one that you were the most interested in, or was interested you the most,
Hmm.
if you remember, because there's a lot. You don't.
Well, I think Lanfear is like the most prominent. Like, I think like of any Forsaken, you have to remember Lanfear.
Well,
She was also second most powerful, right?
I would
No, not
say
even close.
I would say that well, like, I think everything would be second compared to Ishmael, compared to Moradin, right? Like, he would be first in prominence, power, everything, right? But and then
Yeah,
everything after that would just be placed after him.
it'd be Ishmael and Demandred probably at the top.
Yeah, it goes Ishmael, Ravine, Demandred, Samael, Agnor, Bethlehem, Asmodene, Bilal, then Lanfear, and then the rest of the women.
So yeah, so that was also another interesting thing because this universe when it's set out in book one and whatnot, like I said, all the women that are Aes Sedai and everyone that can wield the power in this world, they all start off as women, but um especially during the end, pretty much all the like the most biggest power holders, like the ones that had the most ability with the power, were men in the end, right? It would be Moradin, it'd be Rand, right, and then it'd be fucking Robin and Demon Dread and everybody after that. There's you wouldn't really get like an Aes Sedai or one of the Forsaken that can surpass them in raw power when you got to the end.
Right. But the funny thing was he highlighted the most powerful is when you combine men and women to like,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah, when you
fuse
link,
power.
yeah,
Yeah, like that would be that was one of the most important things in the end, right?
Right.
That was
It's
the
just like
mistake that the first guy to lose there, and he fucked up because he only used guys to try to, or he tried to only use, I guess, one power to try to seal the dark one or whatnot, but you needed both of them or something like that.
it's a combination of both um, powers basically to successfully seal.
You know which one? I think the one Forsaken I would not like to get along with in the real world where it was be that one chick. What was her name? Simmerhage or whatever. The one that liked to torture people.
Summerhane?
Simmerhage. This is also one of the other things that always bugs me because these names are all spelt so fucked up. So when people are like talking about these characters,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's like the standard way of pronouncing them, but
When I first started reading the books, Nynaeve was one of the weirdest names to get around.
an
Like,
egg
I don't know why.
an Egwene
Eh,
or
Yeah,
Egwine
and Egwene.
or whatever.
Egwene, yeah.
Yeah, those are fucked up names. Easiest one by far was probably Rand, Matt, and Tom, right?
And Perrin. I mean, Perrin's pretty
Oh yeah,
easy.
Perrin. You can't fuck that up.
Yeah.
Perrine.
But some of the women, back to the women have potential, like Egwene, Nynaeve herself,
Oh yeah,
and what's her name, Avienda.
Avienda. Yeah, for sure.
She's said to be like like has the potential to be one of the greatest
And that was on
wise
purpose
ones.
too, right? Because it was during this period of time where I guess it would be there was such a surge in power that you got all these like really powerful people coming. They had like the three main characters, Rand, Matt, and Perrin. They were all simultaneously Taveran, right? Like chosen ones, like in one generation. And then people were saying this is fucking unheard of, right? And that was one of the reasons that Moraine, the first Aes Sedai character that you sympathize with, like goes out to search of them because she figures out what like the Dragon Reborn is reborn, right? And also there's three Taverns, so then something's up. Like if you were gonna study like the history of this world throughout the ages and try to get some kind of pattern from it, this will probably be like fucking red flags all over. Like something shit is gonna go down, right? Like we got three fucking Taverns. You have, just women, just randomly in this one village, concentrated in this one village, are some of the most strongest, some of the most highest potential Aes Sedai, on the women's side ever, right? And then you get these three kids that are also Taveran coming up to the village. Like this is fucking, like this is a fucking bright red flag for them. And then,
Yeah, well, that was supposed to be all because, the pattern kind of weaves around Rand and all that, so it makes sense that they're all there.
Yeah, the pattern was trying to push the Dragon Reborn out.
yeah, this was it. Like the pattern reached that point where it's going to change to like the new era or whatever, right?
That's also why there were so many false dragons in this short amount of time before Rand.
Yeah, and those guys weren't even a joke. Well, I mean, yeah, the false dragons that got killed around Rand's time, yeah, they were kind of like a dime a dozen. But I guess the ones that people always thought, like throughout their thousands of years of history, they would have very prominent ones that they thought would be either like Taveran or Dragon Reborns and whatnot. Like,
Well, you're missing one there
Not
because
really. Sorry.
Logain is actually like he's like in the top tier there as well, and he was a false
Yeah.
dragon.
And Mazrim Tame is the one before. There's the false dragon.
was it only those two before? Wasn't there more of them that they rounded up and killed?
But those were the ones that were rounded up and killed. These were the ones that were rounded up, but just like these guys were.
Yeah, no, these ones they didn't get killed, right? That's
Yeah, like
But they also, I don't remember if Taim did, but like Logain claimed to be the dragon, so that's kind of different than just a male channeler, right? Which
Yeah.
he didn't really differentiate in the beginning. They kind of treated every male channeler like that versus ones that actually claimed to be the dragon.
well, yeah, and Logain also was pretty prominent because he actually raised an army, right? At that point, so he was, some of these other guys would be, hunted down by like the Red Aes Sedai, but Logain was one that was actually fucking had enough power to do like open rebellion and shit, right?
Tame was also strong enough. The fact that at the end he got promoted to frickin' he was the basically towards the end of the series he was the latest Forsaken, like to officially take that title. He was one of the chosen of the Dark One at the end. So, and because the rest of them are from frickin' 3,000 years ago, this guy was from present time. He got elevated to that, so he was that powerful that what's his name, Demandred actually elevated him, or sorry, Ishmael. I forget which one.
He got promoted basically.
He got promoted to chosen.
Yeah,
That's
Forsaken.
that's an interesting part too, because I'm pretty sure. Well, you guys read it, and when I did, I definitely thought he was going to be Demandred, and I think I read some stuff that originally Sanderson came to that crossroad, and people were figuring that out. So then he changed that up. I don't know if that's official or not, but he definitely wrote it, and Mazrim had some knowledge that he shouldn't have had, like a lot earlier in the series, that led it to seem like that's what Demandred was up to. So it's kind of interesting character there.
yeah.
Yeah.
There are some contradictions even in the writing. Like they have, the main series, and then they also had the companion, like the supplemental, I guess Wikipedia book for the universe, right? And what people were saying were, like, yeah, if you have to, when you read this, you're gonna have to reconcile the fact that there's gonna be some contradictions in the way either the story is told, some of the lore is told, some of like even comparing power levels, right? Like the companion book, the wiki, would have it listed as like levels and tiers and whatnot, right? But then, in the companion and also in the series itself, the main series, there are a lot of contradictory, I guess, things that wouldn't make all of these things too clear cut. So, I mean, yeah, like Mazrim Tame, they thought it was gonna be Demandred. He said some stuff like that he shouldn't have been able to even have the knowledge of. Some of these, I don't know, some of these rankings of some of the powers, some of the, it's not as solid, I guess. I guess people at the end, you just have to make your best, weave it together with your best judgment.
A good example is Avienda. She's actually listed like tiers and tiers below Egwene and Nynaeve, but she was often compared to be as strong or stronger than them both in the series.
Yeah.
And then Cadsuane is listed above Egwene, but she never really demonstrated anything to be that much above her.
Yeah, and Catherine was supposed to be like the top of her time, right? Like of her generation, Catherine was supposed to be this like legendary Aes Sedai. But you could chalk it up to at the end. You could just say, this was the Dragon Reborn like power surge, right? This fucking everybody from that village was just gonna be that much more powerful than everybody else.
It doesn't have to be that because it was
Did you just die off?
a lot of no people put on a face. You might not be smart as you say you are, but the way you project the world makes people think, this guy's so confident, or this guy's so strong, or whatever. Especially with Katsuane, we don't just.
Yeah, is anybody else hearing him cut
think
out?
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
just like in and out, but I'm trying to make sense of what he's saying.
Yeah. Sorry, Hassan, can you just kind of repeat it a little bit? You cut out. You cut out like Yeah, it cut out like 90% of what you were saying.
Okay. What I was saying.
Okay, he's like completely cut
Yeah,
out
you're
for me.
completely cut out.
But I kind of get an idea of what he's saying. And maybe you guys can correct me if it seems wrong. But
Obviously,
the way
obviously he's touching upon something because now the powers that be are
Ways-
censoring him out.
yeah, they don't
They don't want you to know what he has to say.
they don't want yeah, because it's really interesting because if you kind of consider everyone from their POV, it gets more interesting because like you were saying,
Right.
Katsue may not have the power, but she can manipulate and influence everyone around her.
Oh, of course,
So
yeah.
they perceive, right?
Yeah, because that some of these rankings and some of these I guess debates are just from just raw power, right? You're not taking into account like you said, her personal like political IQ on stuff, right? Like her ability to think things through and to like manipulate, especially because she was very good at manipulating the events in her favor, right?
Right.
And Rand, you could tell very early on he didn't know what the fuck he was doing, and he would just be like raging all the time because things weren't turning out for him. And later on, you could see his skills in these like areas to start to rise, right? He could play the realpolitik, he could play the courts and shit, right? Like the power relations, and you could see this from most of them too, because all three of them ended up in positions of power. Like they have to command people. They had to learn how to be like fucking leaders, right? And the book makes it easy because in real life, like it's like 1 out of 100 you can make it as one adds that station.
You're talking about. Sorry, I just lost all you guys. You guys
Nice.
talking about
You're back.
the main three: Rand, Perrin, and.
Nah, we were talking about like yeah, that's just the raw ability in the one power alone it wouldn't be able to accurately like I guess describe the abilities of a person. Like we were talking about Katswain and how she had that political acumen that's not taken into account, right? So she's that much more powerful, more able if you take into account her as a person, where she can use this manipulative skill that she has to further her goals, and even if she doesn't have like the raw power that, Egwene does comparatively, she was still that much more of a frightening person to deal with.
That's what I was trying to say when I was getting cut out, is that like it could be more of just the way they're like in Katsuin's example, she's become a legend in her own time. And because of that, people are in awe of her, so they automatically assume that she must be, freaking leagues above everybody. And it's kind of the same way. I'm going off this book again, but if you've read Patrick Rothfuss's what's it called?
Name of the Wind.
Yeah, the name of Kavoth, like he has so much of a presence, like he's a legend. Like he's well known all around the world. But then as you go through the book, most of the cases or just myths and legends built around him are just normal happenstance kind of thing that he
Mhm.
falls into.
He's kind of the opposite of Don Quixote, right? Where like Don Quixote exaggerates everything around him, whereas Quirrell's everything about him gets exaggerated.
But it's interesting because like you only know that from a story that he's telling, so you don't know if that's actually accurate either. You know, so
Right. Because he's telling it to someone. He could be downplaying his whole story because he's be telling it in a tavern or something, if I remember right.
It could be either
yeah,
one. It could be he could be exaggerating it. He could be downplaying it. And you just don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
You're just getting his version.
yeah. Well, and you know he is like he does tell people he is the best at this. He is the best. You know, whatever. So it's kind of an interesting play either way.
I kind of want to let's. I kind of want to flesh out, sort of what's going on in this world, right? Like, people have an idea. They have a better idea now that they've watched all the Lord of the Rings series. What kind of Middle Earth looked like? Well, in this series, what was the continent called again?
It's never really
The
named.
West. Well,
What was the world
sorry.
called? Was
Well,
it?
they
Was
had
there a
like the
specific name?
Westlands, you had Shara, you had the Isle of
Okay.
Madness, and then you had like
Sean
Shanchan
Chan and all
Island.
those. So it's basically it's kind of the same deal where in the north it's just a bunch of dead land, right? Like there's something that like dead land that used to be the domain of like I guess the
It's
Dark
the
Lord, right?
the waste.
The wastelands, right?
Or
No, you're thinking of the Blight.
The blight.
blight,
Yes,
sorry,
sorry,
yeah.
the blight. The blight is basically like the fucking creep that comes down. It just spreads a bunch of like death to the land, right? And it originated up where like the Dark Lords, the Dark One's lair was, fuck, what was it called? Shedar. I forget the name. What was his name again? Either way, it was up in the north. Yeah, and then you had a bunch of kingdoms around the north that were kind of like the vanguard kingdoms to stand between the civilized world and this blight from the north, right? And where all the Trollocs and shit would come down from. After that, you go down, if continuing down here in this map, you go down towards the center. That's where you'd get where the Aes Sedai is, right? Tarvalin, right? This big white pearly city, full of splendor and wealth and shit.
It's a vagina.
Yeah, it's shaped like a vagina. I guess I don't know. I can't remember. It sounds right to me.
You didn't get that? Basically, that's what it was. It's like the home of all the women, and the home of all the men was the Black Tower. It's very. I didn't think he was very subtle about it, but
Yeah. Anyways, lands around there, and then like further down south, you get a lot of like rich kingdoms like Andor and whichever else, fucking, and then along the coast, you got a bunch of minor kingdoms and all that shit. To the east of all of this is another big kind of desert, and that's where another civilization of people called the Aiel live, right? And these people are actually really important too, because later on, you find out that these aren't just like regular desert marauders. They were actually quite prominent, like in one of the first eras, right? And then what the funny thing, not really funny, the interesting thing about them is they're super violent now, but the original Aiel, they were supposed to be super pacifist, and that was actually quite a surprise to me when I found out about their origins.
Yeah, well, you should mention that they also did keep the faith with the Tinkers. They also followed the original Aiel path.
Yeah, Tinkers are, yeah, more or less they can be considered like a branch from it, right? But yeah, they are probably the closest ones to the original Aes Sedai ideal, right? Like, wait,
Yeah, the
Yeah.
servants, pacifists. Yeah.
yeah. So we're not going to worry about spoilers because we're going to tell it all anyways. Yeah. So I forget which book it was where it was revealed that this universe is supposed to take place, including our current universe as well. It's supposed to be like this giant cycle that always, returns to certain points, certain eras, as as the wheel turns. Right, it's in the name, the wheel of time. It's always a cycle that's turning. And then like it goes from like very simple, very like medieval like settings, all the way to a very advanced, technologically advanced civilizational world. Something happens that ruins everything, and then it just keeps on going the cycle. And then the Dark One is supposed to have basically the hand in basically this calamity always happening, right? And then the one of the things that makes the main character of this time, Rand, the main guy, so supposed to be special, and why this term Dragon Reborn is always there, is because he's supposed to be a reincarnation of a guy that in the previous era, right? Lews Therin. And then during his time, the Aiel, the people, the desert people that we were talking about, those guys were those guys. Like the Aiel of the desert people, the super violent, fucking good at fighting, live for combat Aiel of the desert in the current time. Back then, they were, like you said, they were servants. The Aes Sedai was translated as servant, right? And they were supposed to be just completely pacifist, non-violent, all that jazz. And it's funny how it kind of just it turned into this after a while. It was like a very Mad Max feel.
I didn't
Oh,
feel like they were Mad Max, I just felt like they were a desert tribe, and I really enjoyed the part where they were talking about, the Aiel marching on that kingdom for the guy making a throne out of whatever.
Made it thrown off the tree.
Yeah, I thought all of that was interesting to start the series anyway. They were an interesting people, and they had their own ways of things, and it was interesting to see the main character tied in with them.
Oh yeah, definitely. I liked their whole fucking story in regards to them. Like they were written real well, and I also liked because during the end of the series they also have that kind of flash forward where some people get a vision of the future, and it was basically the Aiel versus the Shan-Chan, right? And the Shan-Chan were these people that were like the descendants of one of the very prominent Taveran, Arthur Hawkwing, and they they basically colonized an entire continent and then came back after 1,000 years. And then I found it interesting because when I read about them, when I was reading about them for when I got to that book, it did seem like they were like a lot like Aiel in some ways. And then in the future, flash forward, they actually fight, right? The Aiel and the Shan-Chan, and the Shan-Chan win against them.
Yeah, the Aiel are basically dispersed all across the world. And well, that's not really. It's like one of the possible futures.
Right. It's not a definitive future, but it's one of
Yeah.
those visions.
Yeah. But it's a good sense of what the future holds for the Aiel if they don't do something pivotal at the end of the book, which Avienda has to do. But it was the Shadow Rising book 4 when you first learn the history of the Aiel through Rand's eyes, and that book, those chapters, I think I reread them like 3 times, just because it was just fascinating. Like that, the Shadow Rising is where the Wheel of Time became the Wheel of Time. Like, I think that's where you're like, well, at least for me, I was like, this series is going somewhere. Like, holy.
Yeah, it had a lot of key points, like especially with Matt first meeting the snakes and foxes as well. I thought that
Oh
was
yeah, those
Yeah.
fuckers.
Yeah.
pretty important for the whole series.
So at the end, it never fleshed out exactly what they were. Were they just on a different planet? The snakes and the foxes, were they just on a different planet or some shit?
They're like their own dimension.
Their own
magic
dimension.
door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they weren't really part of the world, but they did have a link to it.
Yeah, like through
Yeah.
the Tower of Genji and then through that one doorway.
And I think Matt as a character was is probably a favorite of a lot of people too, because fucking he's a little cheeky bastard.
Yeah, I like Tim and Perrin probably almost as much as Rand.
Actually,
hated Rand.
which one you hated?
Rand was so boring. He was just until he got put in a box. Then I really felt for him. That made me so angry.
Well,
but other than that, I really like Perrin and Matt more than Rand.
well, as a Rand, he's the one that you get the most frustrated with a lot of times. I felt like that because I think my most frustrated time of Rand was actually after the box when he became so fucking emo and angsty. That's when I started hating. I'm like, man, just fucking get over yourself.
Dude, the amount of times in this series, if people had just said like one line to each other, like it would have solved like 80% of their problems. Like if they had just said something, but like the whole teenage angst and stuff really did create a lot of the drama in it. Like how many times could Matt have said something to Perrin or whatnot, and it would have just they would have missed a whole arc if they'd just done that.
Which time are you thinking of specifically?
I can't even remember the exact ones. There's so many. Like I'm like, hey, you're with Egwene right now. Why don't you just tell her this? And then I can't tell Egwene this. I'm like, okay, here we go, another book.
You're headed to her right now. Why don't you say this when you get there? No, that's not gonna happen.
That's not what Rand would have done.
Yeah.
No, but even I agree with all that, but I still think Rand. I don't hate him as much or think he's boring, considering just looking at how, like, what he's burdened with. In fantasy, what usually happens is, someone finds out that they're the savior of the world, and then for maybe a few pages or a chapter or so, they're like, how, why me? And then suddenly they fully accepted it, and they're on towards gathering armies and beating the bad guys. Whereas in this case, he realizes that, and then
He basically crumbles.
he crumbles. Yeah, like when you come to that realization that the world rests on your shoulders, as a 19, 20-year-old, you would crumble. I think so. I think the conflict within himself and the fact that he gets kind of boring and weird kind of makes sense. Like it's not like, hey, we want you to go out into the world and become the first doctor for a village or something. It's like, no, you have to figure all this shit out and save the world from the Dark One.
And I like that part of his transition too, because he gets really angsty and he gets really down, but then like I hated that part. But then he kind of embraced it. He became like super cold, and he was like, you know what? If the world's shit, then I'm just gonna fucking, you know what? I'm just gonna fucking end it. I'm just gonna fuck everything up. And then I was like, fuck yeah, you know what? Yeah, if you, I would feel that way too if I was in your boots at that time in the book. And then I actually liked that part when he became like fucking dark.
Yeah, he had a lot of things. Like I don't know if I quite liked it, but like they kept his power in check the entire series by having that injury from Ishmael in like book 2, and then he loses a hand and all that jazz. So he's always been like his power's always been checked. He's never like completely
That's
full
the
powered.
part that was always frustrating me, because like I was always like, just fucking end that. You have the power to end most of these people. But like you said, he would be checked by it. Like the power's limiting him in some way, or he loses a fucking hand of all things, and then he has to learn how to jerk off of his right hand or something. It's these things at the end. Like because I wanted him to just fucking overpower everything, and they kept on teasing me.
Yeah.
The other thing that he deals with is the fact that all these nations, he has to bring all of these nations together, and he's going to them saying, "Hey, I'm the basically
He's the
savior
dragon.
of the
He's the
world.
dragon reborn.
Yeah,
right?
I'm the dragon reborn, and you guys have to listen to me, and we have to somehow join." But all these guys have their own petty arguments that he has to somehow fix for them so that he can get them all together on his side. It becomes very political, and when you get political, I think it makes sense that it gets.
But the thing about him was that his political like struggles was never frustrating me. It was just purely his power. Like when he would get in like a big massive fight, when he could unleash himself, right? Kill tens of thousands of Trollocs. He can like actually wipe out most of the Forsaken just single-handedly. At the end, it turns out he could just single-handedly wipe out multiples of them. But just throughout this, like the progression of the books, something's always holding him back. Like something's always like fucking troubling him. He gets bested by some stupid reason or whatever, right? And that was the part that frustrated me the most.
well, for the first 5 books, Moraine Sedai is trying to teach him how to be
Yeah,
the Dragon
like
Reborn
she's
and
she's
how to
being his
control his
Obi-Wan,
power.
right?
Yeah, she doesn't want him to unleash his power. In book
Oh,
six
there it is.
is when we get to see the magnitude of his
see.
power.
So yeah,
Book
we
six is the
begin to
first
see
time
the
magnitude of his powers at the Battle of Demai Wells.
yeah, but there's
So
always something, right?
after that, then it's just a question of him being like, "Holy shit, I'm this freaking strong," and then coming to terms with it. So I guess because that's the thing when we're reading, like I noticed this too, I felt it too. When we're reading 14 books, you expect like maybe 10 years have passed in these guys' lifetime, but it's only if you look at the timeline, it's only like 2.5 years. So it's very it seems long because we're
Let's see.
reading
Yeah,
14 books, but in their timeline, it's only 2.5 years.
it's quite fast. You go from nobody to become the most powerful
Yeah.
guy in the world in 2 years. But like you said, yeah, I mean, you view it like that way, you say, "Wow, what a meteoric rise!" Right? And of course, he did. Both him and everybody that traveled with him from his village, they all fucking found themselves in very powerful stations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Matt more or less just becomes the concubine of the Shanshan queen, right? Like he is. He's basically the
Yeah.
concubine, glorified
Well, he's the prince actually.
concubine.
And he's a brilliant one of the most brilliant military commander the world has ever seen because he has the knowledge of all.
His was funny because like Perrin, you can more or less say that, like he was going to grow into his ability because whatever the fuck he is, he's just got some kind of he's got like part wolf in him or some shit, right? Rand, Dragon Reborn, he's already born of, he's going to be going into greatness. Matt, there was nothing to say that Matt was going to be as powerful as he was. He basically like he either got it by himself or he kind of stumbled it into the power. And but even when he stumbled into it, he got his his strategic bump in skills and that the power that the foxes gave him. He kind of got it from his own like talking his way into it and fucking
Yeah, but you're discounting a point where like you couldn't tell that in the beginning because he was like throwing out old tongue stuff that he had no business knowing, and he did have this insane luck factor. So you
yes,
knew
he
there was
did have a
something
lot of
special.
luck.
Yeah.
So wait, he was already talking about stuff before he went to the foxes.
Yeah, he would speak in the old tongue like when he went into a couple fights in like the first two
Oh,
books,
right, you're
and they're
right.
like, how does he even know this? Like,
Right.
it doesn't exist anymore.
You're right.
So he
You're
had
right.
like his blood was special.
Okay, so then I'm a little confused then. So what did the foxes actually give him then? If he's already had a little bit of leakage of that ability he would have.
Well, that was also his benefit. You remember when they talked to the foxes, he was actually talking to them in the old tongue, whereas you needed
right.
a translator before. So they already knew he was special, and they did give him that knowledge, and they gave him the halberd. And
So
then,
what was his sort of without the fox's help? What was his kind of I guess budgeting ability? Was it he could just remember like past lifetimes in some way?
He was abnormally lucky even before.
Yeah,
and he
but
was one of like the strongest warriors, like bar none. Like he beat Galad and Gawain, like while still sick.
Yeah. And they had, I think he had his staff and they had swords.
Yeah, it was supposed to parallel some other story they told in it about the master staff guy, but
Yeah.
yeah,
They were
so
all-
he was already
they
a
were
jacked
all-
warrior.
they were all physically they were all pretty strong, like
Well,
very strong.
They are the ancient blood of Manetheren, so they would be strong. They have taught their village, Emond's Field, are the descendants of Manetheren.
Matt's kind of like he's kind of like Wolverine in a sense because Wolverine, he was born with his power and his bone claws and the healing factor and whatnot. But then after he got injected with the adamantine, then he became that much
for
stronger.
sure.
I think it's like Matt, like now that you remind me, yeah, it's true. He did have some of these unexplainable abilities in the beginning, and he did have this luck, and then all of that just kind of got supercharged after he talked with the foxes. But I know. I don't like. For me, it's still like if he didn't talk to the foxes, he may still be. He may have not reached that level that Rand or Perrin would have. I don't know. That's my
Not
thought.
as a commander, but like he was still. I don't know. I don't even think there's like you could name like three warriors technically above him if he could beat Galadriel or Galadriel. Sorry, like there's only really Lan above him in physical prowess.
But that was a staff versus a sword, right?
Yeah.
But two top swordsmen like that were peerless.
Yeah, you can't
there's-
discount
Yeah.
his fighting ability just because he was just because he had the staff.
Yeah, there's Gon because he's training to be a warder, and what's his name? His older brother,
Galadriel.
Galadriel. Yeah, that he's known as basically one of the greatest.
One of the top swordsmen. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Jaime Lannister of his time.
Yeah,
And
basically.
Matt was recovering. Matt was recovering from his sword wound, and he had just stepped out for a walk or something like that, and he happened upon them. And
Yeah,
Okay.
they were trying to parallel him to some ancient warrior that was like the best warrior ever as well.
Like I said, man,
with their story.
if you came from that village, you got a fucking buff, man. Like everybody coming out of that village got a massive buff.
Yeah, some even before that. Like Rand's dad was also almost parallel to Lan in swordsmanship.
He was
supposedly.
he's one of the top guys because he had the heron sword, right? And that was the symbol of a master blades.
Yeah, but the key was
Master
that Lan
swordsman.
complimented him. So I thought that was like the key point that put him above your average blade master.
That would because Lan by himself was probably one of the top ones as well. Like
He is the top. Because he
okay.
beat Demon Dread, who's a 3,000-year-old sword master.
Yeah, he did his seppuku move and lived. That's some skill. If you did a seppuku move to kill the other guy and then you live from that, yeah, it's that's some ability right there.
that's hardcore. Yeah.
Okay, but one of the things that was actually my favorite of this series was the fucking was the romantic aspect. Because I like how Rand had 3 wives at the end. That was, you know what, more people should write books like that.
Well, like this one really, like the most emotional part of the book to me was when Lan went off to fight, and then Nynaeve went around like going to get his like bannermen. You know,
Yes.
like that was definitely like a key moment. There.
I like that too. Nynaeve and Rand and all 3 of his wives. And then we got who else? Matt and the Queen of the Shan-Chan, Perrin and his wife too. I liked most of them. The one that was the most out of left field and weird for me was Tom and Moiraine. That one was always weird to me, and I felt like that just came out of nowhere.
Me too. That one, like there was, from my recollection, there was no indication in the beginning of anything between them.
Like
In the beginning, he told the story about him, about like
That was that he was in love with Elaine's mother, wasn't it?
yeah, was that was because Elaine recognized him from when she was a kid, and then
yeah.
Yeah.
That wasn't
that love
Moiraine,
story
was
wasn't canon.
Moraine, yeah.
That was,
No, oh,
Morgase, yeah.
wait. Sorry, that's right. Yeah, the Moraine one that threw me off too. That one came out of nowhere. Yeah.
I like that Rand and Egwene, kind of started together, but then quickly separated and stayed that way.
Yeah, I
That was
totally-
nice too.
because I would have thought that they would have ended together. And in the beginning, when I started the book, when you were telling me about it, and you're like, "Oh, by the way, Rand ends up with 3 wives," I definitely thought she was going to be one of his 3 wives. I thought
I thought so too.
for sure, I thought that. And then in the end, yeah, you're right. Like they don't. They just end up like this platonic relationship, like brother and sister and whatnot.
Because she's so annoying.
Yeah, you could get that from her. I mean, truth be told, I think some of my favorite characters in the book, well, the women characters, I would say most of them were just ended up being Rand's wives. But I also like the Empress of the Shan-Chan. She was pretty funny. She was pretty fucking hilarious. I liked her as well. I like this whole fucking this what do you call that when it's like the mistress and the fucking slave relationship between Matt and the queen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I like most of them. I like Tuan and Matt, but I didn't like Fail and Perrin that much. I found she was like so annoying, and then like when she got kidnapped and like Perrin was like just so obsessed about it, I'm like, dude, come on, let's move along.
Was a little too obsessed there. It seemed almost like way too fucking obsessed. And on the flip side, she was like, "Oh, I should save myself before Perrin comes and saves me, because then I'm gonna
Yeah,
lose face to him."
Yeah.
So she
at
was
that
like,
point I was like, "Bitch, what are you doing?"
she's like trying to save herself, like create a rebellion inside so she can get out or something, or get a gang going on the inside, so that they can all get out without Perrin's help. And he's like obsessing over her. That was some messed up shit.
Yeah, well, like that caused the death of like that one good dude, right? When Perrin just came marching in, it was pretty funny. I was like that poor guy. He just tried to do so good by him, and then Perrin comes in there and just obliterates him.
Oh yeah, no, I also agree. Fael would get kind of annoying with her, fucking because I don't know, like she just felt like she always needed to fucking do something and take charge and shit, and then it would kind of turn out for the worst whenever she would kind of think something or plan something.
The other annoying thing I found about the main women was like Nynaeve and Egwene. Like whenever they'd see the guys have progressed in like social stature or something, they'd be always like their inner dialogue would be confusion. They'd be like, "How the hell did he make it so far?" When they themselves have also come so far, but to think so little of the guys, like how the hell did Matt get so big when she's sitting there like on the I'll say on the Emerald seat, she's sitting there and she's thinking like,
Yeah, she's the top.
yeah,
She's
and
the
she's
top
looking at
power of the continent,
then
institutionally.
when Rand comes to visit her, her inner dialogue is like, how the fuck did he get so big?
Yeah, I think Zinzin's mentioned before, but one of your favorite dynamics is how the three boys all pat each other on the back secretly.
Yeah, yeah. Whenever it comes to girls, especially, they're always like, "Oh, Perrin." Rand's always like, "Perrin and Matt know how to talk to girls. I wish one of them was here to talk."
that was the funny one. Yeah, yeah, but it makes it memorable because these three guys, like this camaraderie is very strong and it's very well written in this way, and in a way it makes the story go along too, and it's essential for the story throughout all 14 books. This camaraderie between these three. It's probably one of the the crutches that they fall back on, right? And it really gives you that sense that without one, you would think that the other two would have been in trouble, whether it was like some personal fucking crisis that they would have to go through, or it would be the larger, like strategic crisis of a trouble in the world. Like they wouldn't be able to get to accomplish. They wouldn't have been able to survive if the three of them weren't just weren't like good together. We're looking out for each other, and that was. I think some books are really they don't really get that. Like they may want to write characters like that, but they don't actually get it. Like in practice, it doesn't turn out that way, or it doesn't turn out as good. I guess it's really hard to have some relationship like that.
A ride together, die together relationship for the three of them.
Yeah, and it wasn't like corny either. It worked well.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, and
Yeah, I think it was subtle. Like every time they think about how like the other would act, just like that line, you realize that hey, like Rand is thinking about Matt. Like, Matt. They haven't seen each other in like how many chapters, but like they're always thinking, well, like, hey, what would Perrin do or what would Matt do? And so I think that kind of builds on it, even though the characters aren't actually interacting with each other that much.
Yeah, you could feel like the emotion you could feel it when you're reading it, and they have a reunion of some sort, right? Like they would go off and do their own shit, and they would go campaign and go through the story for a couple books, and then when they meet up, either just either Perrin or Matt or Rand or Perrin or Matt, any combination of those, those three, you could feel it, like that sense of, I guess, that happiness that to see each other, right? And you can see it in like how they're written, how they act, how they speak to each other. It's just like a breath of fresh air for all of them. And then when all three of them are like are finally reunited together to take on something, then it feels like you as a reader, when you read it, you feel pretty good. Like you feel like it's an actual reunion that you're going through as well.
The other thing I wanted to mention about Robert Jordan's writing is like, in terms of setting up the universe, we get to see, like in other fantasy, the guys leave their hometown, small little hometown, and then they go off, have these adventures, and then come back and nothing's changed. Their hometown, like even in Lord of the Rings, the
Yeah, the
Shire,
hobbits. Yeah, they go
it's
back.
still the Shire.
Yeah,
Whereas in this, we get to see the progression of the whole world. Like,
everything's changed. There's no way they could stay isolated.
yeah, and even Emmons Field, like Perrin has a major storyline coming back to Emmons Field, where he, like you get to see the progression of Emmons Field from a little village to, who knows, in the future maybe one of the centers of civilization of the new.
Yeah, it went
of the world after the series.
it went from something very obscure to something that was put on the map.
Yeah.
And even the people, they're changed from the first book. From the first book, you get this idea that they're just a bunch of simple folk, but very vulnerable and whatnot, right? At the end, the army from Eamon's Field were some of like the best archers that they could field in the final battle, right? I mean, that little village, aside from producing all the fucking main characters in the entire story, and they're all overpowered. Even like the nobodies, they would form out to be like, they would be punching above their weight, right? Them as part of the army, they were punching way above their weight.
Yeah, it was nice to see like everybody saying to the Emmons Field archers, like, there's no way you can make that shot, and then it's like, holy fuck, he just made that shot.
Yeah, they turned out to be one of the best archers, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that kind of bugged me, and this will be one of the few things that bugged me in the series, and I see this in a lot of other stories, as well, movies, shows, books, whatnot. Is you start off when they start off, like their perception of like scope is so small. Like I remember when they were in the first early books, they were talking about like a gathering of like 5,000, and then to them at that time they thought it was a big fucking deal, right? They're like, holy fuck, how are we gonna deal with like an army of fucking 5,000 or whatever, right? But eventually through the books, that just exponentially increases. Like the numbers that they field in battle were just like hundreds of thousands, right? Like fucking Shan Chan even landing on the continent, they would bring over hundreds of thousands. In like a big battle, they would lose like 50 grand worth of people. And I just like, what is like, and it's always like a funny thing to me. I'm like, man, just a couple of books ago, these guys were like shitting their pants over 5,000 people, and now they're fielding an army of like 500,000. If 5,000 dies in one day, they don't even bat an eyelid anymore.
Yeah. And even like in the first book, like how on their way out of Emmons Field, like the small towns, I can't remember the names now, but they stop at and they're like, holy shit, this is a big town. And then they go to the next one, they're like, holy crap, this is even bigger than the last town.
But
And
no,
then,
that part is understandable, right? Because these
Yeah.
are like fucking country bumpkins, and it's like them going to fucking New York or something, right? And like, holy shit.
but that's what I mean. I really like that reading the first book, because it put you well into the perspective of them. Of like, it helped with the getting into seeing the world from their point of view.
Right. But you
And
see, my thing is, it's within living memory. Like the people in that time period, they would have had like at least knowledge of when the Aiel came to like fuck on the guy, the kingdom that like cut down their like sacred tree for a throne or whatever, right?
yeah,
And then in that war there was like hundreds of thousands of Aiel that kind of descended across the deserts to fucking lay siege to the kingdoms, right? And with the same people, alive and in power, they were like, in the beginning, they would have like dialogue where they would be scared of, a gathering of a couple thousand, as if it was like a formidable army. And then, as it goes on, like, why would those people ever feel like that would be anything big? If they've even gone through, the Trollocs descending from the north in the hundreds of thousands and Aiel coming over in the hundreds of thousands. I mean, like, you would think that those guys were alive for that, and then they would think, like, fucking, yeah, this is nothing. This is a couple thousand. Big fucking deal.
What would you guys rate as your like the best book out of the series? Like your top 3.
You guys go first. I gotta think. I don't even remember the books that well.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't remember what happened in the books.
Right,
I can
guess, yeah.
I can give you my favorite fucking, I guess,
Like
arcs?
scene or
Story
plot.
arcs?
Or,
Yeah, scene,
yeah.
story
Let's
arcs.
go with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Final Battle for sure. I like that, but I liked pretty much any interaction between Rand and his future wives. I liked all of those. Matt, when he got with the Shan, I like that. Yeah, you know
Wherever
what?
there was-
A lot of it
Wherever there was sex. or
yes,
possibility of
wherever
sex.
revolves around Rand or Matt getting some, those are
Yeah.
some of my favorite moments.
Okay, cool. I say if we're going by moments, I would say my favorite moment is when Rand goes into what's that city in the Ruidin and gets the visions.
Right.
of-
Yes, yes.
of his
That is one of the iconic ones too, right? Because that's when he figures that shit out, right? Like he sees the origin stories of the Aiel. The other guy can't handle it. Fucking claws his face off, right?
yeah.
Just seeing
And-
them as a bunch of pacifists. That guy couldn't. That the other Aiel guy couldn't fucking handle it. But yeah, that was a great scene, and also one of my favorites because at that time I think he was with Avienda, right? During that time.
Yeah, that's where like they get. I mean, that's where they get introduced to each other, kind of.
Okay, so
Yeah,
see,
she was his helper to learn the Aiel ways.
and she was like that. She had that like whole Sundare attitude. Where it was like, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, I love him.
Yeah.
And she was also coming to terms with the fact that she can't be a maiden of the spear anymore, and she needs to be a wise one. Start the wise one training.
Yeah, I didn't even take note of her when she got introduced because she was just one of those Aiel spear maidens or whatever, right? But later on, when when she was basically got more writing time, she became also one of my favorite characters. Just her mannerisms and all that shit, right? Like it's they play the part of the foreigner coming into lands. They're like, the fuck, you do what with your water? You bathe in it or some shit like. That was great. And then if you pair her up with Elaine, the other one of Rand's wives, where she's like the hot, like the pompous, higher class noble woman because she's a princess, right? And you pair them together, so some of the best scenes come out from both of them interacting. Oh, the best part, one of the best parts was when they all got their minds or whatever linked with Rand's. So like they can feel each other, right? Like their feelings or whatnot. Yeah, they all got bonded. That water bond. And then when the first time Elaine has sex with Rand, and they can all feel that shit at the same time. That was the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah, I like a lot of the main stuff. I also like a lot of the little stuff. Like I liked all Jane Farstrider's stuff. I liked Podon Fane's stuff. Like when even the Black Wind was scared of him. All that kind of
Yeah,
stuff was
his-
really interesting.
What was up with him? I mean, like he wasn't really part of like the Dark One's plans, I guess. Was he something separate?
He kind of became a being beyond. Like originally he was just a dark friend, and then later he got mixed in with that, basically the dark essence, and he was his own thing by the end of it.
Yeah,
because he was so powerful. He just like destroyed like Fades himself.
yeah, they'd be
If you
scared of it
recall.
because I would always be confused because I'm like, is he working with the Dark One? Is he associated with him, or like it's always seemed like he was his own independent thing. He was like
That's one of
Like that.
the freelancer of
yeah.
evil.
That's where we really got left out because I think he would have been fleshed out even harder if Robert Jordan had finished it, and we kind of just didn't get the full pot on Fane by the end of it.
Jordan even wanted to expand. He wanted to do a story of Matt going back to Shan Chan, right, and writing about that. I mean, like that would have been fucking bomb. I would have read that.
He had a couple of as he called them, like outrigger novel ideas to take place after the main story, the main sequence, and he also had some more prequel ideas. But
Yeah, because I
uh,
think everyone was like wondering what the hell happened in Shara the whole time. Like what's going on over there.
yeah,
Yeah, because
that
they come out of nowhere in the end. They just arrive by portal, right? And all these people that you've never even, and it was never described. No one's ever seen them, and it was only like mentioned in passing. All of a sudden, in the last battle, they just come en masse as part of like, well, who was it? Demon Dread's army, or
yeah. But even so, like we didn't get to see the development of the Sharans, but
yeah.
the 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 link between them and the Aiel, like after they show up and then they discover that was I think fascinating the way he connected those 2 points too.
What link between them and the IEL?
Remember how the Sharans have channelers, and it turns out that those channelers are the because the Aiel had a tradition of sending
Right,
anybody
right.
any yeah
Those were the IEL um people that were like expelled, right?
yeah. So if anybody showed signs of the power, the if any men showed signs of the power, the Aiel would send them
Yeah.
away.
I
Just
thought most of them ended up at the north, at the Blight, to
but
basically
that
die
see
by.
that's what they thought too. But apparently they made it to Shara, or the Sharans took them in or whatever.
And who else wasn't really fleshed out? The hunter guy.
Oh,
Yeah, the Slayer. He was kind of like he was kind of a parallel to Pot on Fane because he was like two souls in one body.
yeah.
I always thought, like, who the fuck's that guy? One of the more prominent royal families. I think it was in Andor. They had to send their son. No, or was it either way I forget. But he was one of the prominent, I guess,
Are
historical
you
male people, and but he got sent, or he went to wander the Blight. And I always thought he would be the Slayer guy, but that never materialized. I don't even know who the original guy was.
Yeah, it was two guys. One was a Demondred, like related to Moraine, and the other was
Yes.
someone else.
Well, yeah. How was he related again? Was it her brother?
A Damodred, sorry. No, he wasn't that close. I think he'd be like an uncle or something.
He was because Elaine has sort of like a passing familial removed relation with Rand too,
Oh, that's
right?
right. He was a Mandragoran as well. He was related to. He was a cousin of Lan, and then
Yes.
It. I
Slayer
think
was.
it. He was related to Rand's mother, right?
Rand's mother.
Rand's
Yes,
mother.
Rand's mother.
Rand's mother
She
was
was royal, right?
yeah,
yeah.
Yes.
she was related to Moraine technically, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And for a second I was like, oh no, does that mean Elaine is going to be Rand's like stepsister? But thankfully it turned out it wasn't the case.
There was that part too where Rand's trying to figure it out. That
Yeah.
was funny.
Now, yeah, he was doing the calculation in his mind. He's like, "Fuck." I
The
just,
same
I just,
calculations you did, he was doing that too.
it's like,
'Cause
did
they
I
were
just
more
bang my
important.
cousin? What's going on here? We're half
Oh,
sister.
oh, sorry. The other half was Luke Mantier, which was related to Grain or something like that. Sorry, she wasn't directly.
Yeah. She was. Fuck.
Oh, he's
Which,
Rand's uncle technically. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
right. Right.
It, see, like this stuff kind of got confusing, but it was also fascinating at the same time. Just seeing all the connections for for a while there, I was like, what the hell is happening? But then when you like actually map it out, it's like it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I definitely had to look at a family tree a couple times just to get it all in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine if Jordan was gonna finish, he would have fleshed some of these things out because these are kind of like loose ends, right? In the end, right? In a way, I mean, Sanderson ended it pretty good, but there were some things like you said in the that like godlike being that Rand has a vision of in the last book, right? Like it never fleshes out who that person, that girl actually was.
Yeah, and Sanderson, in an interview, made a point to say that she was important to him, but he couldn't explain much more than that, I guess.
Yeah, and it's yeah, and it's interesting at the end because Rand, what he got from it when he did his like last,
Cutting out.
yeah, when he did his like body switcheroo and won in the end, he kind of got something that's more than the one power or whatever everyone's used to, right?
Uh, you cut out there for a bit, so I don't
Oh,
know if
sorry.
you want to repeat everything
Oh
again.
yeah, I was just saying that it's just interesting in the end that when Rand did his final action, when his final move to at the end of the book and defeated the Dark One, did his body switcheroo. He was supposed to have lost his one power or whatnot, but he obtained something else entirely in the end,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think that stuff could have been fleshed out had Robert Jordan been if he was still alive, but
Yeah,
the
it's kind of interesting because Sanderson's a prolific Redditor, and one of the theories he's allowed to confirm it if somebody accurately puts out a theory,
Oh,
and one of the ones was on the body switching and the theory behind that, so that was always interesting as well.
what was the theory behind that one? That
It
he
was just basically that the spirit that wanted to live would get the body that lived, and the spirit that wanted eternal nothingness got the body that died. That was basically the thrust of it.
Yeah, because
That's why they switched when
Morden
they
was always
combined.
yeah, he was always the guy that wanted he wanted the chaos, right? He wanted it all to fucking end.
Yeah, that was the interesting thing about Balefire and stuff throughout the series, and how it was destructive to the pattern itself.
Who was the one that I remember in the books they would mention that whenever Rand would have these scenes uh where he would like meet one of the Forsaken or the Dark Lord or the Dark One. There was one guy that looked almost like him. I can't remember if it was Moradin that would looked very similar to him. That people would always make that remark, or was it someone else?
Moored into Rand.
Yeah, remember
Uh,
when he would have when like especially in the dreams where when some of the girls would see like someone that they thought looked like Rand or whatever, but it was one of the Forsaken. I forget which one it was. Was it Moradin?
I don't recall that myself.
I don't recall. It could have been the Forsaken taking on faces because they could use the power to change what they look
No,
like.
it was they didn't change any appearances. It was just like all they would make in the book. There would just be a remark where it'd be like, like there were a lot of striking similarities. Like if you weren't gonna focus on looking at that person in the face, you would have thought it was Rand because they look so similar.
Hmm.
I can't remember that. I don't remember. I missed that. Then
Because in the end, like Morden and Rand were basically like the opposite counterparts of each other, right?
yeah, the good and the bad. Yeah.
So I always assumed that he was like, the guy that kind of looks similar to him when people, would make that remark, I guess. Because in the end, he fucking takes his body anyways, right?
Yeah. Uh, I mean, I remember the end, but I can't remember other.
Well, like obviously Ishmael looked way different to Moradin, so I can't really say if the
Ishmael's
original Ishmael looked similar to Rand or not.
You look kind of fucked up because the Ishmael when he when he was in his body, he would have like fucking fire coming out of his eyes and face, right, and his
Yeah.
mouth. So, I don't
I
know.
think I think that I recall like basically anyone that was Aiel, they'd be like, "Oh, Rand looks like that." So I remember a lot of that. They're like with that heady Aiel guy, they're like, "Oh, that guy looks like Rand" and all that. But I
Oh
don't
yeah.
remember any Forsaken people that
Well, it wouldn't
drew
be the
similarities.
Forsaken. Oh, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I have to go back and read it, but it was always these remarks. Like I remember, like Nynaeve made one of the remarks or whatever when she was fighting one of the Forsaken, and then she was like, "Oh, one of them looked it looked sort of similar to Rand." But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think any have any. Well, they're all like 3,000 years older than him, so who knows about family lines?
Or maybe it was Taim. Someone on the other side.
Yeah, I can't remember that.
It's one of those details that will always get like it's impossible to try to find it again. In 14 books, you'd have to go through to try to find this whole thing.
And there's wonderful details like that explaining or like shadowing or foreshadowing how big this universe is and how like massive the power is. Like the one that really caught me was towards the end of the series where uh Androl, who's one of the Ashaman, the one who can only weave gateways and can't do anything
Yeah,
else,
yeah, yeah.
and he bonds one of the Aes Sedai, Pavara,
That was
and,
funny.
or no, she bonds him, and then he bonds her back, and because of that double bond, they have like a telepathic link where they can just
I like that.
they can they can just talk to each other
I liked how in
telepath.
the beginning when the Aes Sedai found out about these like the male channelers, they were just losing their shit and they had like nothing but contempt for them. In
No,
the end,
you know what? Oh, sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the best part was when that chick forced the bond on Rand, and they're like, "You're a rapist."
Oh
Like all the
yeah,
other Aes Sedai looked down on her.
who was
Yeah,
it again? It was like Alana or some shit or whatever. She turned out to
yeah,
be yeah.
Alana.
That was funny. Like they would like shun her. They're like,
Yeah, that because that was the equivalent of rape,
forced
basically, because
herself.
she forced herself upon him. She didn't ask him if he wanted
I love it. Like, yeah, and then when Elaine found out that she bound it, she was like furious.
Yeah.
That was the best. That when they were like when Rand fucking had sex with Elaine and they were all bonded at that point, was Alana or whatever, was she still bonded as well?
Yeah, yeah, she was always bonded to, but she wasn't bonded to like
The rest of the girls,
the
just
the,
Rand.
the yeah. So she could feel what Rand was feeling at that point, but not what the other three were
I
feeling.
like that the best. That's one of the best parts.
Yeah, I think she was skilled enough to also keep out the bond and stuff too, unlike the other girls who didn't know anything about the bonds back then.
No, I like to think that she was just fucking in the middle of eating soup or whatever, and all of a sudden just fucking orgasm in the middle. In this part of her mind that's bonded.
Fair enough.
Oh man, I see what you took away from this whole series.
Yeah, the most important
If
part.
mhm.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like what,
then
3
you
women, huh?
you could have had more. You could have had Lanfear. She was all over him the whole
Yeah,
time.
she was.
She was
She was.
supposed to be in the universe. She was supposed to be one of the hottest women there as well.
Yeah, and yeah, she was really after him.
Which would be interesting to see who they cast as Lanfear in the show. Which kind of brings me to the show's gonna come out maybe next year. Like, what are you guys' thoughts on it? You think it'll meet the expectations? What do you think? What are you seeing so far?
The potential to do it. I think it has the potential to do it. It's just, and I think they'll be a little bit more cautious after the Game of Thrones debacle, but I think they can do. I think they can do the series justice if they play it right. Um,
Do you know what rating it has?
it's Amazon, so it could be R. I don't know, but
Mm.
I don't
I
think
think
it would.
I think rating has like a big part to do with
Would
like
it
the
ruin it?
success.
Would it ruin it for you if it wasn't R?
Probably because Another series that I really liked was Sword of Truth, and
Mhm.
that got aired on through Disney, and I just thought it was just horrible. It is such like an adult series. Yeah, it's just so weird that it's on Disney.
You know, if they know what they're doing, that's probably gonna be the same rating as Game of Thrones. It'll be the same.
I hope so because it's like a very mature show, like
Yeah.
a very mature story. I mean, and you can't really get around like anything, right? Because like the story basically opens with like Rand being abandoned, right? Because Lan his dad picks him up, right?
Well, it opens with fucking Luz there and killing his entire family.
Oh, he him killing his wife and family and then
Well, kind
exploding.
of. Yeah, well, it starts off with Rand is already kind of grown up, right? This story is like fleshed out later on as you go
Hmm.
through, and like he finds most of that out. I forget actually when he finds most of that out. Was it when he goes to the Aiel Waste to Radian?
Yeah, I think they talk about his mom then, like how she came to the IEL because she had a kind of received a prophecy or whatever.
Yeah, she was. Um,
It was
fuck.
Big Rain, and
She
she got up. What's her name?
she
One of
was.
the
Yeah,
one of the Aes Sedai from the New Spring timeline, like the New Spring. Um, she had made the prophecy that the Dragon Reborn had been born,
yeah.
and she's the one who had told her, I think, that she needed to leave and go to the Isle and everything.
Yeah, yeah. Whatever the case, her mom, because she was the part of the royal family of Andor at the time, right? And then she packed up and left and went to the Aiel Waste.
Yeah, all very true. From what I've seen on the show so far, and there's been like some leaked like pictures in that. Looks like they're putting in a really big budget, so it'll probably be pretty good. Anyways, as long as they build the story right, I'm interested to see how they deal with the issues. Like only channelers can see the power, so like when Tom's watching people channel, is stuff just gonna start happening around him, or how they're gonna do that?
Yeah, we'll see
What
what they cut and what they leave in, right?
what I'm worried about is the length of the show. Like, if like season one will be book one and two, is that what they're gonna do for the rest of the books?
So it'd be like 7 seasons in total then.
Yeah, I think that makes sense if they do like 13
Hmm.
episodes a season.
If it's long episodes, yeah, for sure. You can
Yeah,
you, you
if
can
they do
fit it
like
in.
13 episodes of like 50 to 55 minutes an episode, I think it would be fine.
Hmm.
But if they were to do one book per season, I think that would just be stretching it and making it too long, and you'd run out of material for some of the seasons because some of the books are kind of,
Hmm.
They're just world building, like they're not
yeah,
progressing the story as much,
yeah,
So
which you don't need that in a visual media as much.
right.
something like the White Cloaks would just be like a different series as opposed to putting it in this one, right?
Well, white cloaks are pretty important though, right?
No, yeah, they're pretty important. I think their storyline might get downgraded a bit, like it won't be too intertwined with.
I
I don't think. I
I
think they
think
would be even more. I think they would want to include all the white cloak stories and shit.
I think the White Cloaks story starting from when Galad takes over will
hmm.
become will become important, but all the beginning stuff mostly deals with parents. So I think they could streamline that part a little bit. But that's just my take on it. I don't know what they'll do, but
Yeah, because I mean, Perrin has that run in with them pretty early that makes them hunt him the whole time. But I don't know how, like, you don't really need to dedicate a lot to that, I guess.
yeah,
No, you
yeah,
probably
Well,
won't need that.
I what I would like to see them do is just have like scenes of the White Cloaks, like whenever they interact with the main characters, and not really explain it, and then just do one season from like just the White Cloaks perspective,
Oh,
because then that way the story you could just like you can kind of, oh yeah, like this happened here and there, and the story would be a lot easier to just digest
Yeah,
as
one
opposed to
season
like,
would be too. I could see them do that from the point of view of the White Cloaks for maybe like an episode or two.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, maybe like three, depending on how much material they. But like what I mean is just like have their section like just completely separate, but like have them in the main series. That's what I would like to see.
I mean, it would follow sort of like the book structure that way because it does jump around everybody's point of view, right? Like
Hmm.
if you were like a show creator, you could take that and utilize that. You can make it into something that's more watchable medium, right? Like it kind of in that sense, it kind of writes itself for a screenplay,
Hmm.
right? Like all of these things are fascinating as fuck. They gotta have a point of view from the Aes Sedai, especially when like Egwene and all the girls are training there, right? Like fucking, that's one of the big parts of the entire book, right? Like their lives while they're living in Tarvalin and in the White Tower and going through that as apprentices. And you also gotta give that you gotta have the White Cloaks in there because they're like the fucking they're like the inquisitors of that time, right?
Hmm.
So you gotta have, or else it doesn't work. Like you won't be able to you won't be able to like really flesh out like the tensions between like the kings where they have to balance between White Cloaks on one side of your territory and then Tarvalin you gotta consider that as well, right? And then
Hmm.
and everything that stems from that. I the one thing maybe that I don't know whether they will flesh out too much will be just like the sea folk. I'm not sure because they were pretty prominent for a bit of the time, but like I don't know how much they would flesh out like the whole sea folk sort of deal.
Yeah, I don't even think they're really necessary. There wasn't really anything important with them, I don't think. Like they had that chick training with them for a while, and
Yeah, I mean
that
it
was
really
about
doesn't
it.
amount to anything. They just had weather control, right? They needed them for the fucking bowl that controls the weather.
Yeah.
Weren't they the ones that like taught them how to like channel together though?
But no, the women could always link.
Yeah,
Yeah, that wasn't a
Oh,
secret.
huh.
They had fine control over the weather or whatever. But I don't remember anything really important that you couldn't put somewhere else.
and some of the border kingdoms, I think they'll reduce it. They'll reduce it
Yeah.
to a lot less.
Maybe
right?
just one or two.
Just
or
one border kingdom?
Well, maybe because what at the end there were supposed to be five of them, right? Not counting Land's collapsed
No.
country. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, they could just reduce it down to maybe one or two, three. Because you don't who the fuck cares about? I don't even remember all five border countries and their leaders, right? So
So, like with the sea people, what you mentioned, the sea folk, I think in the books they were somewhat important, but they were also a vehicle to show how much the Aes Sedai don't really know about the power, even though they think they do, because they had these skills that the Aes Sedai didn't really have in terms of weather
yeah,
or not
and that's
much.
that's the same
No.
with the Aiel as well. With the
Yeah.
Aiel, I guess wise ones and shit. Like they're gonna have to show that all these different societies have this same deal where the women channelers they have some kind of prominent place in the society, and but this is how they place them is different, and how they deal with men is different. They're gonna have to have those to show them.
Yeah.
But I mean, the sea people, I think they're gonna be in it. I just don't think they're gonna have an extended like story like in the books.
No,
And-
like who cares about that chick's training arc and whatnot? I don't think any of that mattered at all.
Yeah.
But going back to the border people, the northern borders, the one thing that will be kind of weird, but if they reduce the border kingdoms, they're gonna have to explain how the border kingdoms mustered hundreds of thousands of men to go up there, right? Because if you only have like one or two kingdoms and they can all muster that amount of men, then it's kind of like, in my mind, it feels a little bit unbalanced to be in like this world already. But we'll see what they do.
Okay, so how about the ogres? Do we cut them out?
No, you need
I
the
hope-
the fucking
I hope not.
Trollocs.
I hope not, but I I think they will get cut out.
How would you cut
Oh, they've
Trollocs?
already casted. They've
No,
casted.
the Ogier, not the
The
Trollocs.
Oh,
Ogier,
the ogre! Oh my god, I totally forgot about
Ogier.
those fuckers.
No, you can't cut them out.
So
Like,
they are
he
they're
was
already
one of the
cut
best
out as
characters.
Holy shit! Yeah, they totally exist. Yeah, you got...
They've already casted the guy. What's his name? Loyal.
Oh, did they?
They've already
Lo-
casted.
Lo-
Oh
that.
my god, I completely
Yeah,
forgot about these motherfuckers.
So they're gonna be there for sure.
Okay. I was thinking maybe they would just be the narrator of the story.
Yeah, then who the nah? They have to be in there. They have to be in there in their whole fucking steadings and their little...
Dude, I don't know if any of you guys listen to any of the audiobooks, but like Michael Kramer doing Loyal was like probably one of the best parts of the audiobook. Like his voice like carried it a lot of the times.
Want
One
to
of
get
these
the
days.
audiobooks? I want to get the audiobooks, but they're so freaking expensive.
One of these days, maybe I'll listen.
You
if
can
I do
listen to it on
the
YouTube.
audiobooks.
Yeah, but I like these kind of things. I like having them, like books or series that I like. I don't want to just.
But you've already read through it, right? So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the second time would just be a treat to yourself if you're gonna listen to it by audiobook.
Yeah.
I like the audiobooks too. If I think Sanderson writes very well for an audiobook format.
Sanderson would be great for audiobooks. Yeah.
Mhm.
I just gotten into audiobooks like recently, like literally this year, and so I've had a couple. Right now I'm listening to the Name of the Wind on audiobook in the car just for fun, but yeah, I'll have to get around to Wheel of Time as well.
So wait, Phil, what did you say that you'd hope that they would keep in the show, or what was your
Oh,
favorite?
the Ogier, but like I just have a feeling that if they might just like reduce budget with their stuff.
What was your favorite parts, like your favorite story arcs in the series?
I like Matt a lot. I
Oh,
like as soon as he I just love it when characters are overpowered. So like, and Matt, like he would abuse his power, right? So I just really enjoyed it.
And you wouldn't get that frustration that you would get with Rand, where he's just fucking held back because of all these things. Matt
Yeah.
does utilize everything fully.
hmm Matt destroys like everyone in battle. Like just he gives it his like in a way. Matt always tries his best because he has the least going for him. Like at the beginning, right? He doesn't have like any of the things the other two guys have, and he would be the guy that if this story didn't happen, he wouldn't amount to anything in the village. So it's kind of interesting how his played out.
You know, the funny thing and the satisfying thing about Matt's arc is always when Matt is doing these feats of ability or strategic planning or any of these things that make people in awe of it. He has an audience that witnesses this. Like, if you notice, a lot of times when Rand goes and does something, he may just fucking teleport somewhere and just kill a bunch of like 10,000 Trollocs or whatever and teleports out. It's, you don't really, even for a long length of the books, you don't even get to really see in detail what the hell Rand's doing, right? You're just getting it from the other people's point of view. But with Matt, he always has there's someone that's there to witness all this, and then at the end, that those people are like, holy shit, right? Like, you get that satisfying, or like that gratification, that knowing that these other characters are there to kind of like fucking be there to witness and do this, and then he gets the fucking like the credit that's due to him because they witness it, right? He always has something. Like, that's how he became like the concubine, the queen. The queen at the end was like, holy shit, who is this guy? Like, it's like I want to know more about him.
I love the fact that he's got this, like, once he realizes luck is in his favor, he's got this devil may care kind of attitude where he's like,
Yeah.
always pushing his luck. Like, let's see how far I can push this thing before I can't get out of a situation that's against all odds, kind of.
I feel like if the show is going to take off, the character that's playing Matt needs to fucking nail it, right? Because he's pretty important. He's pretty important just for the, like, not just story wise but character wise. Like, you gotta stick Matt, or else it might be kind of flat without like having a really good, well acted Matt for the role.
Because then you'd have two parents.
So, well, yeah, like, well, yeah, I mean, like, it wouldn't work out without Matt. Like, regardless, even if you just, I feel like he's one of the stronger characters written in the book, right? He carries a lot of the scenes that was just him, and then with more main characters in one scene with him, he carries that as well, right? You have to have a good Matt.
That's, that storyline where he's basically smuggling Tuan out. Well, I mean, she ends up coming with him, and he's got the other three Aes Sedai with him, the ones
Yeah,
that were taken by the Shan,
yeah,
and just dealing with all four of them for that whole length of time while he's there with him. That I think that was one of the best Matt storylines. Like
yes,
the way he gets frustrated with
so
them, but
satisfying.
still figures out dealing with them, and
Getting
that
abused
was
by the women.
yeah, it was hilarious and satisfying, and it was pure Matt, and I think that's one of the
Yeah.
best storylines.
Uh,
It's gonna be like Peter Dinklage like level like of carrying a series, right?
yeah,
Like every episode's got to be about Matt. Like he's got to be involved somehow.
Peter Dinklage
Um,
pre season 8.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed like all of Matt's stuff. Let's see what else I really enjoyed. I felt the same like you about Ran. I always felt frustrated that he couldn't just solve every problem. It's like why I hate Superman like stories. I'm just like, oh, you could just like solve everything, but it's such a it's there's so many hurdles in the way always. Um, I think the best character other than Matt that I really enjoy is Lan.
Lan, yes.
Yes. He's like he is the character that should have been the Dragon Reborn. He was like awesome in every single way, and I was just like, man, if he was the Dragon Reborn, this would have been over, like done.
he would, he wouldn't get much dialogue from him if he was the Dragon Reborn.
He would have just solved the problem.
There's no emotion. He's just.
Yep, completely stoic, but
But that's what
he
makes
could.
him and Nynaeve work so well, because Nynaeve was just full of fucking like full of personality and emotion, just fucking and just a little firecracker, right? And Lan was supposed to be stoic, but she she basically just cracks all of that away, right?
Yeah, Naive is interesting too because she has like, I guess an inferiority complex because she was like wisdom at such a young age, and she always felt like nobody gave her the respect. So she always like demanded that, even though she was like the most powerful. Or she's like frustrated that people treat her like a child.
Yeah, I mean it's different from the like the contempt that someone like Elaine would have for people, right? You would be able to see that yeah, the attitudes are definitely different. I don't know if it yeah, I guess it's sort of the same actions as inferiority complex, but I don't think like the root of her was just because she felt like, inferior, or she had to like maybe you're right. She did have to feel. She always felt like she had to prove herself in some way.
Yeah, she has to
Just
prove herself, and then even when she becomes like so powerful, she still feels like she has to prove herself when everybody around her is mostly like, yeah, we know you're powerful, but she still has to go out of her way
It's.
to remind everybody that
I
she's
guess.
powerful.
Yeah. Exactly. But I guess what I'm saying is her inferiority complex. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. You can make a case for that, but it doesn't stem from like a lack of confidence. If anything, she was super confident about a lot of things.
That's kind of half true because she was like really. Remember, she couldn't like channel purposely for so long that she really was like kind of down on herself.
Yeah. That was that part where she would be frustrated over that, but she got over that, and like I don't. She would even then, even when she was like even when she was having that mental block where she couldn't channel unless she got mad, right? It wasn't. I get it from her a lot of the way that she would like approach things, or in these scenes where she would take action. I didn't feel like there was like a lack of confidence in these things that you would usually see. Like, oh no, I can't do this because I can't channel. She was just like, I'm gonna do it anyways, regardless if I can fucking channel or not. That's what I kind of got.
Yeah, perhaps. I
But
think one advantage that this show will have is that it can follow the book's pacing. Like whereas Game of Thrones, like maybe, what was it, like season 7 when people were just like appearing everywhere and you're like, okay, doesn't make sense anymore. So
yeah, because
hopefully
they
they can keep that in check.
got off the rails. But before we finish off, what was your James? What was your favorite, I guess, arcs or scenes in the book?
Yeah, I didn't really have any particular favorites. I just kind of like the whole thing. I'm not too big on that. I like a lot of Perrin's wolf dreams and stuff, interacting with the wolf, etc. Training and how he's like, oh, I don't want to turn into this invalid wolf man thing. And then he just kind of accepts it in the end and grows powerful from it. He's kind of like one of the most powerful beings by the end with his wolf abilities.
You think they would have to keep the wolves in the show, wouldn't they?
I would say all that stuff's gonna happen, but like even with like say the Ogier, like they'll have like who cares about loyal marrying some chick, or they're gonna cut all that stuff. But you obviously have to have loyal. You'll probably visit a steading, so you know what a steading is, and that'll probably be about it.
Amon or his mother might make a appearance or something. But yeah, like I don't think we see his love life or him getting married.
Yeah, and they'll keep like the main wolf, and they'll probably have some of that stuff, like when Perrin calls all the wolves to help with the battle, stuff like that's kind of cool, and it'd make for a good show.
Yeah.
You think they would be able to do the whole fucking Slayer fights with him, like just
Just
traveling
teleporting everywhere.
thousands of distances?
Dragon Ball fight.
You think
That's
they'll
that's
be-
how I pictured it.
That would be awesome to see. I enjoyed that, like the way they're just flashing all over the place.
But you think they'll have that for the show?
I think they would have to. I mean, maybe not that much like flashing all over the world, but I think it would be somewhat like they might flash from one place or teleport or whatever, dream walk.
I wouldn't be surprised if Slayer got cut, to be honest with you. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
They would need
But
the dream world for sure, but yeah, they may or may not. Yeah, they could overgo. They could just overlook Slayer and cut him out.
I'm not sure how they'll do that because like parents major that's all he was doing in the final battle was chasing Slayer. So
But it may not be
it
Slayer, right? Maybe they'll repurpose some other guy.
oh
yeah,
right, yeah,
Maybe one of
okay,
the
yeah,
Forsaken or even, right?
yeah, it could be one of the Forsaken or something. Yeah,
because
yeah,
they were all strong in the dream world as well.
Yeah.
right.
'Cause
Slayer would be complicated because then they'd have to explain like Rand's mother's family and like how that all tied in and like everyone's relationships to the Aiel. That would be very complicated for the show, and I don't think people would keep up with it,
I
and
think
they wouldn't care.
I
for
actually,
one
I'm the
year.
opposite. I think they need to do that, or else it will just be fall. It will just fall flat.
For
It'll just,
Rand at least, if not for anybody else, at least for Rand,
yeah,
they would have to do the explanation of how he links to the Aiel, like
because you can't really have the story without the Aiel there, right? If the Aiel
Right.
is there, you need to basically link this with Rand and that his origin story and the whole fucking thing. Like I feel like Aiel is one of the core stories and lore that the show would need to flesh out, or else none of this would kind of make sense really in the end, right?
Right.
It'll just be surface, shit that no one doesn't go deep at all.
To go very deep, maybe.
I mean, if you think of it, it'll just be like the rest of the kingdoms would be very similar to what you'd see in like Game of Thrones, right? Andor and the other one that starts with a C. I forget.
Carrion, yeah.
Carrion, yeah. Those kingdoms would look like what King's Landing or whatever would look like. The North would look like, the North, right? But Aiel, I think for this show to make its mark, they gotta flesh out the Aiel part of it, and they need to tie it in. They can't leave too much out of that.
Yeah, like the sea folk, they can trim the everything, but the IEL they can't. I don't think.
The sea folk, they can just get like a generic Pirates of the Caribbean cast to fucking deal with that, right? They don't really need
Yeah,
to
they
flesh
they,
out
they could
anything.
reduce the whole culture to like one ship full of like 20 people or something
Pirates or
like
some
that.
shit.
The
Just
same
topless
ship
pirates.
showing up at every scene. They need sea people.
As long as they have that scene where they just fucking take off their tops when they leave port.
Oh,
Yeah,
actually,
I
I
get.
changed my mind. I decided I do have a favorite scene, and that was when Egwene uses the flame of Tarvalin and changes into the crystal. That was probably top tier.
Oh yeah, that was pretty cool.
Which one was that again? Was that when she sacrifices herself in the end?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. She kills. Who did she kill? She killed Demondrad
time,
or
time.
Taim? Yes. Yeah, they would. Yeah, they would. That would be one of the climax scenes at the end, right? You can
Yeah,
see that.
time was a bastard getting too big for his britches there.
Oh fuck! I hated him.
I was always like wondering, like, I mean, there obviously you'll never find any resources on it, but I was wondering, like, you remember like the original Terran Grial that were like jacked as hell that Rand was tapping into? There was the male statue and the
Yeah,
female.
yeah.
I was wondering if those were like the same thing, and she like kind of like angry-alled herself while using that spell.
Who knows, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
We can
that
only
was kind of
speculate. And also,
yeah.
that was one of the other things I always that kind of frustrated me with Rand, because in the beginning he would always use the little fat man,
Batman. Yeah.
yeah, Angriel, right? And I'm like, fucking just use your own fucking raw power, man. You're like, you're more than good enough for that. But I
also the taint on the power. Remember?
yeah, they gotta like portray that good in the show, and I can imagine, like it'll be like the usual template they use for someone going out of their mind, right? Like Tom Hardy and Venom, they'll probably do that for Rand and lose Theron in his mind.
Uh, I'm really excited for the show, um, and I'm hoping that from mistakes of other shows, they will learn how to make a better fantasy show, because anything that's been adapted fantasy into a show has either had a short run or was Game of Thrones. Like anything else, the Shannara Chronicles, MTV adapted that for like 2 seasons. The Sword of Truth, I forget who did it, but there was only like two
And
seasons.
Disney, I think Phil said.
Yeah, and any other major fantasy series that's been adapted has either fallen flat or it got the Game of Thrones success and then garbage at the end. So I'm hoping they learn from all those mistakes, and maybe this one turns out to be the one that actually makes it like fully and completely.
Yes, I think we all hope that. We all hope that it's done well. You know what? I guess we're gonna close the episode soon, and I'll ask you guys for any final thoughts. But I just want to say that it's kind of funny that if anybody that never read any of these books listen to this podcast right now, first they wouldn't know what the fuck's going on because we jumped all over the place. But all they would get is 2 hours worth of spoilers, just random spoilers that they won't be able to latch on to any story. But if they ever read the story, all the spoilers are there. It would have ruined them.
Well, that's funny that you say that because, like, I think you know how I read books, and I'm like a prolific spoiler. Like, as soon as I read about a character, I go read on the Wheel of Time wiki. I read everything about him, and I'm like, cool. And I'm like, I can't wait to get there. 'Cause that's the type of person I am. I'm like, oh, I can't wait till I get to this part, even though I know who they're going to become and stuff. So it never really bothers me to read that stuff.
I know you are like one. It's almost like another version of Brian when he reads and
No,
watches
you're so
stuff.
outnumbered because I'm like that too. I prefer to like read up on it, get people's like. I like to see the nuances in the story, and like when you read the spoilers, people like give you all this information, and then when you actually go through the story, you're just like, oh,
The
I
most
picked up on it.
the most that I'll ever do is just to see if the ending is good or bad. I won't look into all of these like nuances or like any these like special things to take notice of. I just go to the end and make sure.
Please. I remember your accidental spoiler that, that ruined your day.
Oh yeah, those were but that was by accident. I wasn't looking for that. I was like,
And it was funny because it was actually a double spoiler that you missed. Like you only kind of spoiled it, you didn't actually spoil it, which was funny.
Yeah, the double agent one.
Yeah.
See, I wasn't looking for that though. It's not my fault. It's the fucking wiki page's fault. Fuck that.
I don't know. It served me well in like a couple things. Like I read 4 books of the Sword of Truth, and then I read about this one character, and then I'm like, okay, I'm done with this series. Like, I don't want to read any more about this character. And he was introduced in the 4th book. That's why I made it that far.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. But yeah. Hopefully the show goes good. And if anybody wants to read the book, we all recommend it, obviously. All four
Yeah,
all 14 series.
my opinion is that it's one of the greatest fantasy series out there. Um,
Yep.
I would probably rate it as my top app. I mean, Tolkien is always the top, but this would be us right after Tolkien. So right up there for me.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm a little bit different. I don't really like Tolkien stuff, but I've read probably hundreds of fantasy books now, and this is definitely my top series at the moment. I think Brandon Sanderson will surpass him by the end of our lifetimes,
Mhm.
like just with the sheer volume of work and how good the Stormlight Archives is shaping up to be. But then I also like, if any of you read Joe Abercrombie's, like the First Law trilogy, like his series there might actually also be extremely good. But so far, Wheel of Time's my favorite series.
Ditto. Well, not really ditto. I don't read as much fantasy books as all of you guys. So this one was this one I liked it enough to just keep reading nonstop for 14 books, and I don't usually read fantasy books.
And yeah, I remember when you were first getting into it, you thought you'd take a break after like 3 books for a bit and stuff, and then you just powered through the series.
Yes, and so that's if there's anything, the testament to how good this story is. 14 books, and I thought I was gonna get fatigued even after just the first one, but I kept me going for 14 books, the entire series. Couldn't put it down.
When Zinzin, when you told me that you were reading it, you were behind me, and then you were ahead of me, or no, then you were dead even, then you were ahead of me, and then you were done, and I was by that point I had gone to I think book 11 or 12 I think when you had finished. So yeah, you flew through it.
It was nonstop, man. The story got me hooked, and it was over by that time. Needed to finish it. One overriding goal in life. Anyways, anybody have any final thoughts before we end it?
Uh, Everybody go out there and read The Wheel of Time if you haven't read it.
Yeah, by the 14 book that I think I sent you the link before Zinzin, but it had the beautiful book coverings, like the whole series there.
Yes, yes.
And it made the big dragon. I
Oh
was like,
yeah,
buy
that
that.
one.
It's only $1,000.
That's. Are you buying it, Zinzin? Are you gonna buy that one?
No, I'm not gonna buy that one. But anyone else with money and wants to get into it, yes, you should buy that one.
I probably will. I'm one day. I really want that hardcover. I really want the Wizard Knight set hardcover, and I really want all the Stormlight Archives hardcover one day. So
It's a lot of money, man.
yeah, but that's something special. Those books are they're not your run of the mill one-offs.
When I was reading Wheel of Time, I would buy the hard copy of all 14 books, but then I would also download like the whole book online as well. So then when I wasn't at home reading it, I would be able to like pull it up on my phone or whatever and read it. But I still bought all 14 books, so I didn't pirate anything. All right.
Yeah, well, there's also a lot of great library apps now these days, so you can actually get all those books for free and read them fairly easily as well.
Yeah. Well, anyways, yeah, this is our Wheel of Time talk episode. I hope everybody enjoyed it. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time when we record a normal episode.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
Not a worries, no worries. And thanks to Phil and James for coming in to
I think
guest.
Craig has been dead for a bit.
It's okay. I have OBS as
Okay.
backup.
Ah,
We have the infrastructure in place.
beautiful.
All right. Goodbye,
All right,
everybody.
good night.
Enjoy.
All right. Bye bye.